The plan for tonight is to go over Chapter 7 and then also Chapter 8. I want to give some people some assistance with the Chapter 7 assignment module. I guess it's the assignment number 3, the pizza assignment. So I'm going to go over that briefly with an example that's kind of similar to it that should show you what to do with the pizza assignment, I think. And then we'll also take a look at Chapter 8 and some of the concepts that are in there. Any questions before we get started, folks?
Always have questions, but
yeah,
can't think of them right now, but all right.
Okay. Well, if you do, go ahead and write them down and put them in the chat window if you want. I'll check it too. Okay. Well, here we go then. Starting with Chapter 7. It's all about getting data from the form, as you know. And we can use the get method or the post method to pass data into a form. There's not too much difference between the two. There's a slight difference between the two, of course, but we could use either one. The thing about the get method is that the query string shows up in the address box of the web page, and that's not secure. And the other thing is there's a limit as to how much data you can pass with get as well. So generally speaking, you're going to use post. Get is good if you're getting some data from a database. Okay, so what we've got to look at is the various types of controls, as they're called, that could appear on a web page form and how you use them to pass data into the PHP program. And text boxes, password boxes, and hidden fields all work the same way. And it's pretty straightforward. I think we've got that pretty much down to a science based on the assignments that we've already done. All you have to do using the post method, which is what I would recommend down here, looking down here in this area, use filter input underscore post. That's the super global array. And then username is the name of the field that's the name of the text box from the form. That's the attribute, the name attribute from the text box. And it's just as easy as that to get the data that's put into a text box or a password field or a hidden field. Radio buttons now. What about a radio button? The thing with the radio button, you can actually think of it the same way from the point of view of getting data from the radio button into the form, because as you know, the whole thing with radio buttons is you show a set of buttons, but only one can be selected. And in order to achieve that, of course, the radio buttons all have to have the same name attribute. That makes them mutually exclusive so that the user can only select one of the set. But since the user only selects one of the set, it's the value associated with that particular radio button tag that is going to be readable in the PHP. So as far as you're concerned, how you read a radio button, there's not much difference in the PHP. You just use it by the attribute name. So I think I'm going to fire up the example that I've got on our page. And I just want to point out where that is. If we go back to our page, and if I go into the course content, and go into module 3. Okay, here we are in module 3. And here's the example project that I was talking about. I just want to show you how I would put that into Apache, into htdocs in Apache, so that I could look at that example. But here's what I would do. I would just download that zip. As soon as I download that, that'll give me a zip file. Oh boy. Some feedback from somebody. I'll try to get that zip anyway. So I'm going to download that zip. And then all I have to do is open it up and put it into my htdocs in XAMPP. Well, I don't even have XAMPP running yet, so I'm going to get XAMPP going. There's my XAMPP control panel. So I'll start Apache, and I'll also start MySQL, so I think that we'll need it later. Now, the easiest way for me to get to htdocs is to click on this Explorer button over here. And when I do that, all I have to do is move the window over. This shows me the contents of the XAMPP folder. Yours will be different from mine, but if I open up htdocs, here are the assignments that are currently accessible to Apache. Your assignments, your projects always have to go in htdocs. I'm going to mute everybody because I'm getting some feedback somewhere. Sorry. So what I'm interested in is I'd like to put that project that I just downloaded, I want to put it in here. So I'll double click on it. There's the project. And I'll just drag it into here. Now I've got it in Apache's htdocs. Now I should be able to serve it up with my Chrome in this case. So in order to make that happen, I go back to the Apache XAMPP control panel and click on the admin button. The admin button will show me in my browser the index of all of the projects that I've got in htdocs. And the one that I just put in there was chapter 7. Here it is right here. So I'm going to open that up. And as you can see, I've got a number of examples in here that I want to try tonight with you. And I want to open these up. I think maybe it was Adolfo said he was having trouble with NetBeans, so I'm not going to use NetBeans. There's other options that you can use. You don't have to use NetBeans. Notepad++ is pretty good. I also like a program called Brackets, which I'm going to use tonight. It wouldn't really matter what you use as an editor. You certainly could use NetBeans. I'm going to open up the chapter 7 folder here, and I'm going to open up read form PHP right here. So I'll just double click on that, and that'll open it up in brackets. Looks like this in brackets. I'm going to do the same thing with read form HTML. I'm going to open that with brackets as well. So there's the HTML, and it's about dinner, as you can see. I'll run it back here in Apache. There's what it looks like when we run it. So you can see I've got some radio buttons, some checkboxes, and a text area. Well, let's look at the brackets code for that. Here are the radio buttons. You'll notice that radio buttons all have the same name attribute drink. That's what makes them mutually exclusive. But they have different value attributes. That's how I'll know which one the user has checked when we get into the PHP side. Take a look at the checkboxes. This thing with checkboxes is, as you know, you can select more than one. Well, how will we know in the PHP file how many have been selected or which ones have been selected? Well, we can do it if we use, in the HTML, notice that we have square brackets at the end of the name attribute. That means the value that's going to be passed into the PHP file is going to be an array. It's going to be a set of values with one name called dessert. An array is like a list in Python. If Python's the only programming language you study, an array is the same thing as a list. It's a set of values with one name, indexed, usually starting at 0 for a numeric index. Okay, and then finally we have a text area down here with 30 columns and 5 rows. So that's what that's the HTML that's generating this output here in Apache. So as you know, we can only select one of the radio buttons, but we could select multiple desserts. That sounds tasty. So I will. And for the review here, this is a text area, so I'll put tasty, and I'll put 2 lines in there and submit that form. there's the result of submitting the form. So this output is being generated by read form PHP, as you can see up here in the address box. That's the PHP file that we ran with the action attribute back in the HTML. So we do get coffee because that's the text, the radio button that I selected. And we do get 3 different desserts because I did choose those 3 desserts. Now let's
How'd you get the number 3?
Right here.
Yes.
Let's take a look at the code. I'll go back to my brackets program here and open up the read form PHP file. There it is here. It's just a question of using the count variable. When you're using an array, you actually have 2 choices you could use. But the count method, the count function, I should say, the count function will tell you how many elements, how many different values are in an array. So I created a variable called $_num DESS for number of desserts, and then I printed that out here. Yeah, so there's a count function that you can use. There also is a size of function, which is another option that works the same way. It's funny that there are 2 ways, but they do have 2 in PHP. So here's where we're reading the radio button right here. The radio button attributes, they all have the name attribute of drink. So because we're using post, I use filter input underscore post for the drink. And then for the array, when you want to read an array, it's important that you do this or it won't read the array properly. You have to use filter input, indicate what you want to read, but also you have to specify filter sanitize special chars and filter require array. Without this, it won't read the array properly. So that reads the array. And then what I wanted to do is I wanted to use a for each loop. This is a nifty way that you can go through an array. You can use a for each loop. $des was the name of our array. That's the array of desserts. And you use for each, name the array that you want to go through, and specify a key and a value with this arrow operator here. That's an equal sign and then a greater than sign, which constitutes an arrow operator in PHP. So the array that is returned is a special type of an array called an associative array. And associative arrays consist of keys and values. So that's the key and this is the value. But we're only interested in putting the value. So that's where we get the 3 desserts here, the $value output. And then finally, we wanted to read the text area, which was called review back in the HTML. And I wanted to demonstrate the new line to break method. There's a function called NL2BR. And what that does is it converts a new line, which would be what you would get, for example, in Microsoft Word. When you press enter, you generate a new line, right? Well, as you know, that has no meaning on a web page. In HTML, it has no meaning. So new line to break converts a new line into a break tag. And that's why in the output here, the 2 lines that I entered into the text area come out as 2 different lines here. Without that new line to break, it would just be tasty and service on the same line. So that's a little bit of basics about how that works. Any question about that at all? Now you have to do something similar to this for your pizza program, only it's a little bit more involved. So I thought I'd take this a little bit further by expanding this example a little bit. But before we carry on, are there any questions about those? Any questions about
all that's supposed to be in the main tag?
Yeah, this isn't really a necessity here. We could take this out. That's just a tag that creates a section for CSS purposes.
Okay, so I can, like, if I need to put boxes or something, that's what I'll use.
Yeah, you could put anything at all. This is in the this is the PHP file here. Here's the HTML.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. So if you're all right with that, I'm going to go on to the second version of this, where I expand on this a little bit. This part will really help you with your assignment, I think. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up read form 2, also in brackets. You can see it's got a little more content in it. But I'm also going to open up read form 2 HTML, also with brackets. So what I did with this one is I added a few more items. I added a list box as well as the check boxes. But I also wanted to add up the price of a meal here, which would be similar to the task you have with ordering a pizza. So let's see how that looks if I go back to my project here in Apache, and we'll look at read form 2. So what I've done now, as you can see here, I've added prices for the various items on the menu here. There are 3 different beverages at certain prices. We've got sides. We can choose as many as we want at $3 a piece. This is what's called a list box, where we can select, and I've got it set up so you can select multiple items by using the control key and your mouse. And then finally, we have desserts at $4 a piece. So we're going to price this as well. So let's see what would happen here. I'll go for coffee. I'll get French fries, vegetable medley, and French beans. And I do like my desserts, so I'm going to go cake, pudding, and ice cream. And down here this time, I'll say good service and great food. And then I'll submit that form. Now this time, what we got a total, we got a bill worked out here. So let's see how that bill got worked out. Okay, you can see the 3 sides that I chose, and I did choose coffee as a beverage. So it looks like everything's working okay. So now, how do we come up with this number here, which is something that you have to do for your pizza assignment? So let's look at the code. Here's the HTML. Let's look at the HTML first of all. The sides, because we can select more than one value from the list, I've got to use square brackets again. Okay, multiple values can be selected. Multiple values then are going to have to be accessible inside the PHP file. That means I need to use an array. That square bracket notation means the values here will be passed in as an array. The values will be French fries, mashed potatoes, vegetable medley, and French beans, the individual values. And here's what allows the user to select multiple items, right? Otherwise, it would be a single drop list. But in this case, it's called a list box because we've got multiple items. The 4 just indicates that because I have 4 items here, I didn't want to have to use the arrow up and down on the sidebar to move around in the box. So I made the size the same as the number of choices in the options. And as we said before, the dessert had to be an array too. So not much change there, just the new item here, the sides. Now let's look at the HTML though. The HTML, okay, I used an associative array to get the drink price. Now I didn't have to do that, but I set it up that way, just as a lead into associative arrays. Here's an associative array. I'm going to call it drink prices. There's the array function, and here's the associative array. It's a little different from a normal array. Normal arrays are indexed with numbers starting at 0. An associative array, the index is usually a string. It's not just a digit like 0, 1, 2, 3. So I've got latte with a value of 450. Notice the arrow operator is used. Hot tea with a value of $2.50 and coffee with a value of $2. The arrow operator is the link between them. So what you have is a key value pair, key value, key value, key value. That's the way you set up an associative array. Well, I know that because I'm reading the drink, $drink is going to be either latte, hot tea, or coffee. So if I say $drink prices, square brackets drink, that's going to grab the value for the whatever drink that I chose back in the HTML. So if I chose latte back there, I know that dollar total is going to be $4.50. If I had chosen hot tea, the value would be $2.50 after this line here. Now, it didn't have to be this way. You could also do this with ifs and else ifs. You could say if $drink equals latte, dollar total equals $4.50. Else if $drink equals hot tea, dollar total equals $2.50. Else $drink equals $2. That would mean the coffee. So you could have done it with if and else if, but I wanted to introduce the concept of an associative array because it's very useful. Okay, so then let's go to the sides. Now, once again, the sides, remember back in the HTML, the sides we had used square brackets. So this is going to come in as an array. So we have to use these special validators here. Filter sanitize special chars, filter require array. Now, I can use the count. I can use the count function to determine how many sides were chosen. And then I could print them all out using a for each loop. For each loop works beautifully for going through the values that are returned in an array. $sides is the name of the value that we're catching. Right here it is back up here. $sides is the name of the array that we're catching. So now we can go through the $sides array, reading every key and value, but I only want to print out the value. I only want to print out the name of the side. However, since I know how many sides I've chosen, num sides, I can multiply that by the price of a side and add that onto the total. That's what this line here does. Multiply the number of sides by $3 and add it onto the total. You okay with how that's working? Any question about that, anybody? Any question about that one? Use the chat window if you want to ask a question, or I could unmute you.
Nothing from here.
Okay. Okay, good. Now, the only other thing to consider, I guess, is the desserts. And it's the same idea as with the list box. The desserts constitute an array because multiple desserts could be chosen with the check boxes. And so we can also process that with a for each loop very nicely. Print out the individual desserts. And then we could multiply those by $4. The number of desserts, multiply that by $4 to get our add on to our total. Plus equals adds on to the total here. So we keep accumulating the total. And then finally, we can print out the final value of the bill using number format to make sure that we get 2 decimal places. Number format, the total with 2 decimal places to make it look like currency. The $sign goes inside the string, of course. So I hope that would help you with your pricing out your pizza application. It's pretty similar to this. Quite similar. Are you okay with that?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
On the format numbers, the period in front of it.
Right here?
Yeah, I noticed we have a space in it. Does it make any difference if it's directly or next to the end or?
Well, I put a space here. I didn't really need it.
Okay.
Just a little easier to read maybe, but you don't need it.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay. That's the concatenation operator, right, in PHP? Yeah, that's the way you add two strings together. Here's a string. All of this we format the number and it turns into a string, and then this period adds the two strings together, make one big string. Any other questions?
More often.
Say that again, down low, please.
You know how you got drink prices? Do they use that array all the time, or they mostly use the if else statements?
It could be either way. It could be either way. Yeah, either way is good. Okay, well, if you're all right with that, I'd like to move on to some stuff that's in Chapter 8 that's coming up. So I'm going to close all these. Oh, wait a minute. Did we do everything that was in there? Let me just go back and make sure that we did everything in that chapter. Yeah, well, there's a special chars example here that I think we've already looked at that a few times. So we're probably okay there. All right, so here I am back in my Apache. I just arrowed up to get out of the folder. I was in this Chapter 7 folder. Now what I'd like to do is go into a Chapter 8 folder. So I'm going to go out and get that Chapter 8 folder from our course page out there in my courses. So let's see if we can get there to my courses. I've got it out here somewhere. And I think I'm going to have to log in again. Okay. And I'm going to go to Module 4, which is where Chapter 8 starts. And we have an example here to take a look at too. So I'm going to download that. And I'm going to open that up. There's a folder in there that I'm going to put into my htdocs folder. There's my htdocs folder. So I'm going to get there's the folder that I want to copy into htdocs. So I'll just drag it in. Got it. There's my Chapter 8 folder. And I can now open that up. And I could use NetBeans, but I won't. I'll use brackets once more. So let's look at what's in Chapter 8. All kinds of examples. Look at all the examples in here. I made these up some time ago, but they're all pretty good examples that show you the concepts that are in Chapter 8. So I'm going to go to the book for a second. Let's take a look at the book for Chapter 8. If we go back one step to everything, get to Chapter 8. Starts off with how to code conditional expressions, and it starts with the equality operators: equal than, not equal to, and equal to. It also has the identity operators down here: triple equal sign and not double equals. And for those to be true, here's the thing there: the two operands of different type, you're always going to get a false. Like you could have 2 as an int and 2.0 as a float, right? Well, they're not going to be equal. That'll be represented as false if you use the triple equal sign operator. Well, that can be useful if you want to make sure that it's the right type as well as the right value. That's where that identity operator comes in. Now the relational operators, I think you've used those before: less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. What's interesting is you can actually compare a number with a string, which is surprising, but the string gets converted to a number before the comparison is taken. So it is possible to do that. Let's see what we've got for examples that we might take a look at here. So I'm gonna close these guys here. Closed all those up, and I'm going to go into chapter 8 folder in my HT docs, and let's take a look at the if-else example here. These are pretty basic ones, just PHP only, as you can see. Okay, I'm not using, by the way, I'm not using any validation here. So we're just concentrating on the concepts of the if and the else if and so on, okay? So this is not secure coding by any means. Just want to point that out for starters. But look, let's say that we're trying to get an integer value using the get method. And we want to check that value and determine what grade level that would be. Well, if I try to run this one, it's called if else one. So I'm going to go into my example folder here. I want to run the if else one. Here it is. Okay. Now notice I get an undefined index. Undefined index. There's something missing. Well, I use the get method, and there's nothing on the up here in the query string. So I have to add something on the query string in order to test this. It's called input. Okay, something called input has to be on the query string. So I'm going to go back up here. I'm just going to add question mark input equals 88, and that's a B grade. So there's the way get works. Get always shows the query string up there. So you see, you can actually test your PHP without using a form if you put values after the URL. Start it with a question mark, and then you just put key value, key value, key value. Of course, if I change that to like 76, that would be a C grade. So that's working. If, else if, else if, else if, and notice in PHP you can actually make that into one keyword. You don't have to put a space after the else, although you can if you want. You can do it either way. And whenever you have a series of else ifs, logically you really should finish with an else to be logically correct. Okay, so that's pretty much the same in most programming languages, although of course we're using echo to generate output with PHP. Any question about that one? Any question about that? Anybody? No? Carolyn, got a question there?
No questions.
Okay. Alrighty. Let's go back to the textbook then. That's where your relational operators come in, is for your if and your else. Logical operators are not, which is an exclamation mark, 2 ampersands represents and 2 pipe symbols. That's the symbol right above your enter key on your keyboard. You have to hit shift to get it. The vertical pipe symbol, as it's known in Linux. Well, that's your OR. And you use this, of course, you use these logical operators to make complex expressions where there's more than one part to them. Like, for example, look down here. If age is greater than 18 and score is greater than 680, or state equals North Carolina. So we're using and or in this particular case. Multiple conditions, multiple relational expressions. You can connect them with the logical operators for more complex decisions. Hope you're okay with that. I think we've got some kind of an example of that. Let's see what we've got here. That one we've got something called logical op. Let's take a peek at it. Okay, so this one we're going to use get again, and we're going to use a variable called age, and we're going to determine somebody's age category, I guess. So we'll run this one, and when we do run it, I'll just go back. Get back here. And here it is, logical op. And once again, we have to supply a value up here. So I'll try age equals 15. Oh, that was ag. No, no good. Got to be exactly right. Got my E there. Age equals 15. Of course, is a teenager. And this Groucho said you can't be both. Well, that's a reference to the XOR operator. There's another operator that's actually not shown in our textbook at this point. XOR, that's the exclusive OR. You can be married or happy, but not both, according to Groucho. That was a famous greeting of Groucho, was, are you married or happy? Okay, enough said about matrimony. Let's go back to the textbook then, okay? And the next thing after that is selection structures, if statements with else clauses. Well, I guess we've seen that. Else if. Well, it's a good idea to use braces. Always use your braces to specify your code blocks. Now, here's an interesting one here. There's the conditional operator, also called the ternary operator. And there's also something relatively new called the null coalesce operator. And these are kind of crazy, but they're quite useful, particularly the conditional operator. It allows you to just use one expression to represent an entire set of if and else blocks. So instead of having if and else blocks, you can do something like this. $mess. Let me just make this a bit larger for you here if I can. Take a look at this line right here. $message equals, now here's the expression, $age greater than or equal to 18. Then an exclamation mark. What follows that is what happens if this expression back here is true. So if age is greater than 18, $message is going to be can vote. Then there's a colon. The required syntax is a colon, and what's after the colon is what happens if this condition evaluates as false. So all of this is just like having if age is greater than 18, $message equals can vote, else $message equals cannot vote. So this is a short form for that you can do on one line. And it's particularly good for doing pluralities and so on. It's one nice feature of it. And this null coalescence operator is pretty cool in that it allows you to specify a default value for a variable if you don't want it to be null. So it allows you to set a default value for the variable. And I think we did do it in that example here. If we take a look at the code of logical here, we did that. I guess it's in. I'm sorry. I guess it's in a different one here. We'll find it. I think it's in the ternary operator. Here it is. I added it in here. Here's a good example of where you could use that conditional operator. Look at that right there. $test equals $num% 2 equals 0. Well, as you may know, that's a test for even number, isn't it? If the remainder is 0 when you divide it by 2, that's a test for even. So if that is true, then $test is going to have a value of even. If it's false, $test will have a value of odd. So when you see something like this, it's the very same thing as if and else block, but it's on one line. And we're supposed to enter a number here. So we'll do that when we run this here in a second. And then here's the usage of the unusual null coalesce operator right here. If I let $publisher equal null, and then say $pub is equal to Iraq if publisher is null. So if publisher is $publisher is null, let $pub be Iraq. So what it does is allows you to make sure you get a value for your publisher. So if we run that one, go back here, we can get back to Apache's index here, and that was a ternary operator. That's funny. Let's see. Oh yeah, we did that inside of a loop. Oh, really wanted you to see that. Let's just go back there for a second. Look how we did this. This is actually quite interesting. Look, we started here with an unordered list before the PHP UL tag. Here's the \UL tag down here. So we're going to generate the entire unordered list by using PHP only here. And what we're going to do is we're going to let $num have a value of 1. We're going to start a while loop, which we're going to look at in more detail in a moment. A while loop that's going to run while $num is less than 10. What are we going to do? We're going to test that $num variable to see if it's odd or even, and we're going to output whatever it is. $num is odd or $num is even in the output. And then we'll add 1 on to num so that the loop won't be an endless loop, so we keep going. So we got kind of interesting output from that program, since we'll just go back to it again here. So we've got all these bullets with that loop in the PHP, and as you can see, we got odd, even, like we would expect. And why do we have 4 items in that one line here? Well, no, I didn't. We're not getting anything in this particular case. We're not reading the form from anything. We're not using get or post in this one. Just a plain PHP file. Any question about that at all? No. Okay. All right. We'll go on to.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Just confirm what I think I know. The 0, the number divided by 2 equals 0. The 0 is the remainder, right? There's no remainder versus if there is a remainder.
That's right. That's right. If the remainder when we divide by 2 is equal to 0, then we know we have an even number, right?
Correct. Okay.
Yeah, that's a test for even. Yeah, believe it or not, the computer has no idea that 4 is an even number, for example. Okay, so if that's all right, then we'll move on to the next thing in the textbook here. Switch. An alternative to if and else if is to use a switch. And this is something that's found in a number of different languages. The way it works is you use the switch keyword, and then you have a variable that you're going to test the value of. And then you have as many cases as you want. So this is kind of like if case equals A, or if $letter grade equals A, else if $letter grade equals B, else if $letter grade equals C. You can do the same thing like this with cases. What you have to do, though, in each case block, you have to make sure you put a break in there. Otherwise, it'll fall through to the next case block as well, and you don't want that to happen. You want to just make one of these choices. Now, if none of these are a match for the value that's in $letter grade, none of these values here, then the default runs. This port here executes. And you can respond the same way to more than one value if you stack them up like this. So if the letter grade is A or B, that would be scholarship approved. It simplifies the coding a little bit. So that's your switch. I think we have an example along the same lines. Let's take a look here. Yeah, we do have one called, thought we had a switch. Oh, yeah, here it is. Yeah, we do have switch PHP. Let's take a look at it. This is an interesting one too. Take a look at this one. In this one is actually a Redux program, which we haven't looked at yet. So I'm going to go back and try another one before we look at this one. Let's take a look at Redux. This is a really interesting thing that you can do in PHP. You can use one file to serve as both the HTML and the PHP. And you do that by letting the form action be the PHP program itself. What it means is you just use a PHP file instead of having an HTML file and a PHP file. And the action calls itself. So that's what this means here. We're using HTML special chars to sanitize it here. But there's a special super global array. We're used to the $_post, $_get, while there's also $_server, which is a super global array with information about the server. And one of those is PHP self, which simply means this page itself. So in this particular case, when we submit this form, it's going to rerun this page. Well, if there's nothing put into this text box here called input, if it's empty, then we're going to show this. If it's not empty, we're going to output this. So one file can serve as both the input, if you like, the HTML form, and also the output from the form. One file, one program, which is an amazing thing about PHP. So let's just take a look at this one, see how this one runs. This one is called Redux. So I'm going to go back and go all the way back here to chapter 8. And we want to get Redux 1. Okay, so I have to enter a number. Now this is, as you can see, because there's nothing in the text box, it's showing the form. As soon as I enter a number, like, looks like I entered 12 before, when I submit that, still running the same file, but it shows what I entered. The form doesn't show anymore. The form doesn't show because this is not empty. When that's not empty, you get this output. If the input text box is empty, you see the form. It's called Redux. And it's very, very commonly used in PHP. Well, that first example that we were looking at there, this, I guess, was the ternary. No, the last one we were looking at. I'm sorry. Maybe I'll close it. This one. This is the switch program. And it's also using Redux. Right there, we're calling, this form is going to call itself. So this page will call itself when we submit it. It's going to use the post method. Notice we have a hidden field here too called submitted with the value of dummy. And then we have select. This is going to be a drop list that allows us to select one of these values. And let's see, if submitted has not been submitted. So we're going to use the hidden field is going to be used here to see if the form has been submitted or not. If it's empty, then we know that the form has been not been submitted. So we'll display the form. If, however, it is not empty, then we're going to see this code down here, the else block. Notice right there, opening brace. There's the opening brace of the if right there. And then that's the end of that little PHP section. And then right here is the closing brace of that if. Down here in this next PHP section, when we start an else block, which goes all the way down to here. And then we're using a switch on the team, and the team could be any one of these teams here. And we do have 3 from Florida, so we're going to respond the same way to those 3 teams. So we'll just take a look at it here. It's called switch. Okay, so I can choose a team here. I'll choose Florida. And you can see it, it's working fine. I choose Ohio State, and so on. That's the switch operating. But this is Redux. One file is showing the form and the result of outputting the form. Let's see what else we've got to take a look at in chapter 8. As well as that. It's pretty much the same there, nothing new about switch there. Loops. Got three types of loops in PHP. You got while loops. While loops. You probably studied those in another programming language. A while loop uses the while keyword and an expression, and if that expression is true, the loop will continue to execute. There's also do while loops that start with do and finish with the while. They always run at least once. There's your do while loop. Notice that the test is at the end of the loop. The conditional expression is after the closing brace, so that always runs at least once. And then the other type of loop is a for loop, and for loops work like this. They have an initialization statement followed by a semicolon, and then a test condition here, which will determine if the loop is going to continue the cycle, and then finally a modifying expression here, which will change the value of the loop control variable, in this case $count. Well, I guess we have a few examples that we could try back there in chapter 8. So let's see here. Let's take a look at for loop 3. Let's see, for example, what that one does. And this is a good example of how you can use a loop in your PHP to generate some output in HTML. Notice here, in this case, we're going to run a PHP program called loop cell, and we've got a selection here. We're going to make a drop list called pick, the name attribute of pick, and we're going to use PHP to specify the option values. We're going to say option choice and then put $I, the loop control variable, which starts at 1, is going to go all the way up to 10, right there. And notice here's another way of using for. You can use for and then end for, of all things, to finish the for loop. So let's see how this one runs. This is for loop 3, and it should generate there it is here. If I select the choice, well, there it is right there. It shows you the drop list. That is all generated by the PHP. So if I make a choice, it should indicate which choice I got. That's the Redux working again. Go back to the code on that one. We'll probably know it's loop cell. We're running loop cell. So I guess you'd have to take a look at the loop cell program to see how that was working. Here it is here. Not much in there, just you selected 12 renders for a post pick. Well, this is what PHP is all about, is how to read these forms and how to use selections, how to use loops, with the values that you read from the HTML form in your PHP file. There's a fair amount to it, but it's doable. Just remember how the HTML relates to the PHP, how the values get into the PHP from the attributes, from the name attributes in the HTML form. Even if that HTML form was on a PHP page, it's still got HTML. Well, we're out of time, folks. I'm gonna unmute you all. Just wondering if you have any last questions.
Nope.
I think it might have kind of overwhelmed you here tonight with all that. We went pretty quickly.
Thank you, though. It helped me.
We'll go over this again. We'll go over this again next week to help you finish up the Chapter 8 assignment, Module 4 assignment. But I hope you're a little bit better able to do the pizza assignment now. By the way, this is being recorded. I will put a copy of this. I'll show you where I'm putting these just before we all go away here. At the bottom of your table of contents, there's something called links and resources, and I'm putting the videos right here. Okay, so you can review these. Here's last week's. Here's last week's. In about an hour, I'll put today's right up here as well. Okay, you'll see it up here for February 3. Okay, so have a good one. And I didn't see it finish, but I think the Patriots won the Super Bowl again. Darn it. Those cheaters.
Yeah.
All right, have a good one.
You too.
Get in touch now. Send me if something's not working, zip it up and send it to me. I'll give you some suggestions.
Okay. Thank you.
Brad, bye-bye.